Hey, welcome back for part 2 of Theory Subdivisions. Only today we're not talking about subdividing a whole note. Today we're talking about subdividing a quarter note, and we're going to go all the way with it. So this movie is possibly going to be more relevant for intermediate and advanced players, but anyway, no harm in watching. So here we go. Back to our 60 quarter note beat per minute reference. 3, 4. 1 quarter note, 2 quarter notes, 3 quarter notes, 4 quarter notes. Right, now as we discussed in the previous movie, we can cut them into halves. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and to get our eighth notes. Cut them into triplets, into threes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Okay, that gives us our 12th notes or our 8th note triplet subdivision. Cut them into 4. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... Now, that's our 16th subdivision, and for most musicians that are at an intermediate level, that's all the given. It's really what comes after the subdivision of 16th that causes the confusion in the intermediate player's mind. So, let's look at that. We've cut by 2, 3, 4, 5. Can we cut a quarter note by 5? Yes, of course we can. And the resultant is a quintuplet. Okay? Now, this is not a usual subdivision, and a lot of people gloss over it like it doesn't exist. But I've been very interested in the subdivisions of 5 and 7 for some time now. And again, I'll deal with that even further in an upcoming movie. But for now, just let's look at these subdivisions because they do exist and they are used. Okay? So the quintuplet subdivision, we've got to cut the metronome into 5. So we've got to think of an easy way to get that 5 subdivision in our head. And people sometimes revert to 5-syllable words like university. So if you say that like a robot against that time, university, 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 you'd be playing a quintuplet. It's a fairly unmusical thing to have rolling around in your head though, don't you think? Now, the standard and traditional counting, 1 eander, 2 eander for 16ths, that doesn't really go much past 16ths because people can't get their mouths around the subdivisions at tempo that are any finer than that. Unless, of course, they look at the Indian system of conical, which is a way of singing subdivisions way more musically than using numbers. Okay? And for example, if you were going to sing 16ths in conical, instead of singing 1 eander, 2 eander, you'd be singing takadime takajuna, for example. Yeah? So it's once you get used to it, it's a much easier and more eloquent way to voice the subdivision musically. So in 5, they have one that's called dadiginadum, and that takes a little bit of practice, particularly at tempo. Dadiginadum, 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 da. But there are other ways to use conical counting. You might want to see that as a subdivision of, say, 2 and 3. So use the conical for 2, which is taka. Use the conical for 3, which is takita. Put them together in that time. Taka takita, taka takita, taka takita, taka takita, taka takita, ta. It's another way to play the 5 subdivision in your head. It is important that you think about what you're doing from a musical point of view. These subdivisions are not there just as a mathematical challenge. They're a musical statement, and to play a song based on quintuplets is a completely different experience to playing a song based on 16ths. Again, which I'll cover in a forthcoming movie. Anyway, moving on from the quintuplet to the sextuplet. Whoa! That's 16th note triplets. That's 1 triplet per 8th note. The way you get that in your head from a Western perspective is to first of all take the quarter note, divide it into 8th notes in your head, 1 and 2 and then think of each of those 8th notes divided into a triplet in its own right. So it'd be like 1 triplet, and triplet, 2 triplet, and triplet, 3 triplet, and triplet, 4 triplet, and triplet. Whoa! And again, you know, you can see how cumbersome and clumsy that's getting in a verbal sense. So you could just sing takita, which is the chronicle for 3. You could just sing that at double tempo. Takita, 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 ta. Yeah? So, you know, I throw that out there. I find the chronicle very useful, particularly in the odd groupings like 5 and 7. 7? Yeah. Another odd one, doesn't get used much, but it's there, so don't ignore it. 7. Well, we could go back to the 7 syllables. We got university. I come from a city called Brisbane, so if we went Brisbane University, we'd have 7 sort of syllables, and if I put that at tempo to be Brisbane University, Brisbane University, Brisbane University, Brisbane University. Oh, by the way, if you're practicing any of these odd subdivisions, 3, 5 or 7, and using alternate strokes, of course you'll lead off one and then the other on the other hand. It alternate lead because of the odd number of strokes. Yeah. Chronicle for that, I would combine the chronicle of 4 with the chronicle of 3. So we would have takadimi for the 4, and we'd have takita. Takadimi, takita, takadimi, takita. Takadimi, takita, takadimi, takita, takadimi, takita, takadimi, takita, ta. And again, you know, we have a more musical outcome, I think, in regard to imagining subdivision of the quarter note by 7. Goodness me. All right, we'll jump from 7 to 8. Not surprisingly, subdividing the quarter note by 8 gives you the magical 30-second notes. Drummers are enchanted by 30-second notes. Oh man, it's this 30-second note fill I'm working on. Anyway, 30-second notes are just double time 16ths, for want of a better way of explaining them. You know, instead of getting 4 to the quarter note, you get 8 to the quarter note. So now it's really getting difficult from a singing point of view, right? I'm not even going to bother to try and sing that any other way than with chronicle, and I'm going to use the 16th singing that I showed you before of takadimi, takajuna. I'm just going to use that at double time. So instead of having one phrase per beat, I'll get both phrases within the beat. Takadimi, takajuna, 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 ta. Okay. So it isn't necessary to verbalise the subdivision like I'm doing, but if you can, I think it really helps your brain to understand the subdivision from a more musical point of view, and I think you're more likely to incorporate it in your playing if it's not just a theoretical exercise, but it is indeed something you've laid up on the drum set. Okay, one more subdivision in today's presentation, and that is the 30-second note triplet. Huh? Okay. That's a triplet for every semiquaver or 16th note. So you're telling me 1 E and every one of them needs to turn into a triplet, like 1 triplet, E triplet, and triplet, R triplet 2. Yeah, that's right. But that's like 12 beats. You're telling me I've got to fit 12 beats into the space of a quarter note? Well, if you want to play 30-second note triplets, or 48th notes, yes, that's exactly how many you have to fit in, no more, no less. So again, a subdivision that is not often obtainable in normal music practice, but look, for fusion players out there, when you get a song with a bit of swing that's at a slower tempo, it's doable and it's musically relevant. So, you know, as I said, this presentation is more about intermediate and advanced players when we start talking above the 16th note subdivision. So experiment with these subdivisions on your kit and see where it leads you. Cheers.